welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor review to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, some pieces of news from around the NHL, and we've also got a couple of trade rumors involving the Rangers, the Stars, Utah, and a couple of other teams. We'll get to all the updates from our past couple of days coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for my June 27th, June 28th, and July 1st live streams talking about all of the free agency and draft stuff. Sorry for any background noise, but in today's video, we've got another news and rumor video to discuss. So in today's video, we're looking at some signings once again to start with. We saw 3 signings from our past couple of days, not too much here to talk about and not too many big extensions, but there were a couple of interesting ones. So first, the Calgary Flames have signed RFA forward Adam Klapka, who's 24 years old. He was in the final year of his deal. He was an RFA, had a pretty good season last year, putting up 4 goals and 6 points in 28 games, decent bottom 6 guy. Gets a 2-year contract extension with the AV of $1.25 million. That's not too bad. Klapka's a bigger forward. He's 6'8", so he was a real menace to play against. He looks like he's going to be a very good, solid bottom 6 forward going forward there for the Flames, a guy who's very hard to play against. $1.25 million for 2 years, I think, is not a bad contract. And if they have to bury in the minors, it's not overly egregious. So very interesting out there. I think this is a solid deal for Klapka, maybe a little bit more than the Flames, but Klapka was a solid bottom 6 forward last year, so it's a pretty solid deal for the Flames and Klapka. Going over to the Utah Mammoth, they have signed Ben McCartney, who was a 7th round pick back in the 2020 draft of the Arizona Coyotes, just got off his ELC, had a pretty good season over in the AHL, putting up 16 goals and 33 points in 63 games over in Tucson of the AHL, so very interesting note there. Didn't get into any NHL action this year, but signed a 2-year contract extension with AV of $775,000. So McCartney, I think, eventually could challenge for like a bottom 6 role in Utah. I'm not going to say it's a guarantee he does get the bottom 6 role in Utah at some point, but I think he could be a really solid addition there for Utah, so it's a very interesting update there for Utah. But they do sign one of their RFAs in Ben McCartney to an extension, so very interesting note there. And then we saw the Detroit Red Wings sign goalie prospect Mikhail Postva, who's 23 years old. He is an undrafted player. I think he was playing over in the NCAA or juniors this past year. He gets a 2-year ELC with AV of $975,000. So not a bad contract there for Postava. I think Postava eventually could challenge for like a backup role in Detroit. It'll take a couple of years' time, but it's an interesting ELC there from the Detroit Red Wings. So very interesting note there. But McCartney in Utah, Klapka and Calgary both get extensions, while Postava gets an ELC with the Detroit Red Wings. So very interesting note there. And next, going over to a couple of news updates. So when it comes to some news updates, we've got 3 players signing overseas to talk about. I think I mentioned 2 of these guys in previous videos, but Matt Hollowell, who was a depth defenseman this year in the Pittsburgh Penguins organization, as well as Vasily Ponomarev, who was one of the top end prospects in the Pittsburgh Penguins organization, have both signed the KHL. It's official now, so very interesting note there. Hollowell was probably going to get an AHL contract this year, while Ponomarev, I think it was sounding like he was going to be in the AHL level 2, so they both go to the KHL. While McCartney, who was one of the few flyers at the AHL level on the goaltending side, decent like 3rd or 4th stringer, wound up getting a contract over in Liga. So very interesting note there, as McCartney is sent over in Liga, so he won't pursue an NHL opportunity. So very interesting note there, but Ponomarev and Hollowell are both going over to the KHL, while McCartney is heading over to Liga. Going over to a couple more trophies being won, some more hardware that was given out, and that was with the Calder Trophy and the Norris Trophy. So very interesting note there. The 3 finalists for the Norris Trophy were Makar, Zach Werenski, and Quinn Hughes. All 3 had very fantastic seasons. Hughes had to suffer through an injury, but still put up some very good point totals. Werenski had a heck of a season trying to lead Columbus to the postseason, and Makar, once again, his usual self, hit the 30-goal plateau, 90-plus points. So Makar had a really solid season. The winner was Makar, so Makar has won yet another Norris Trophy. This guy keeps on being a finalist like each and every year, and he's won yet another one, so very interesting note there. Werenski finished 2 in voting. Quinn Hughes finished 3rd in voting, so very interesting note there that those were the 3 finalists. There are a couple of other interesting names on that list, so very interesting note there. But Makar does win the Norris. Well, when it comes to the Calder Trophy, the 3 finalists there were Dustin Wolf, Lane Hutson, and Macklin Celebrini. So very interesting note there. I personally thought Celebrini was going to win, or Lane Hutson was, and it was going to be close between those two. It actually wasn't very close. Lane Hutson completely destroyed the competition and won the Calder Trophy. So first, I think Canadians, either player or defenseman, to win in like over 40 or 50 years. Like, it's been a while since the Habs players won the Calder Trophy. So very interesting to note there. Second on the voting was Dustin Wolf. So the goaltender actually beat out first overall pick from last year in Celebrini. Closely behind him was Celebrini as the third player in the voting. So very interesting note there. But Lane Hutson has won the Calder Trophy. Cale Makar wins the Norris Trophy. So some more hardware is given out as we're getting closer and closer to having the end of the awards. So very interesting note there. But Hutson was actually also voted for a couple of the Norris votes too. So very interesting note there. But Hutson wins the Calder, Makar wins the Norris, and those are some more hardware that was given out. Going over to the Boston Bruins, it appears like all the current assistant coaches on their staff, the Boston Bruins will be keeping. However, they are planning to probably make one more hire on their staff. We know Marco Sturm was just hired to be the new coach, and that Joe Sacco wasn't brought back, signed with the New York Rangers as an assistant. That sounds like they're going to try and replace Sacco with a new body, but doesn't sound like they're going to be making any more moves beyond that. So very interesting note there. But Boston's going to probably try and keep all of their assistants that they have right now, and then try and find one more assistant. So very interesting note there. And going over to the Edmonton Oilers, when it comes to them and the Stanley Cup final, Jake Walman was fined twice from Game 3. The first fine was after whistle. John Klingberg bear hugged Matthew Tkachuk, and Walman laid a couple of punches on Matthew Tkachuk. He was fined for that. I think it was like $5,000. And then he was also fined $5,000 for an incident that happened on the bench where he was spraying his water bottle over the bench to the Florida Panthers side of the bench. So very interesting note there, but Walman was fined twice. No suspensions or anything. It is the Stanley Cup final, so I'd be quite surprised if there were suspensions. But Walman, after a couple of bad plays and bad things that happened in that Game 3, has been fined twice. So very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So when it comes to trade rumors, we've got a couple of things to talk about here. We're going to start off with the Vancouver Canucks. According to Elliotte Friedman, he mentions that Elias Pettersson, who we've mentioned a little bit, that the Canucks might be considering moving him. They could potentially do something like that, and it sounds like they were at least trying to field offers. According to Elliotte Friedman, it sounds like Elias Pettersson is going to be staying in the Vancouver Canucks organization. So even though there's been some talk about him being traded, it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. Friedman and even a couple of other people I've seen say that the Canucks really want him to have a solid offseason, sort of get his mind back in the game and have him have a solid season next year. They don't really want to trade him. So unless there's some sort of a massive offer that a team lays to Vancouver that really makes it worthwhile for the Vancouver Canucks, it's sounding more and more likely like Elias Pettersson will stay in the Canucks organization and not be dealt. So very interesting note there, but don't expect Elias Pettersson to be dealt before his no movement clause kicks in on July 1st. When it comes to Sam Bennett, according to David Pagnotta, he says that progress has been made to an extension between Bennett and the Florida Panthers. A lot of people, that it seems like now, are saying that Bennett's going to stay in Florida. Sounds like it'll be something like an 8-year deal or a 7-year deal at around the $7 to $8 million range, it sounds like, for Bennett to stay in Florida. So I don't think Florida's going to be able to keep all of their UFAs. Like, they have Bennett, they have Marchand, they have Ekblad. Some of their lower end guys are also UFAs, so they're going to definitely lose a couple of guys after the Stanley Cup final, but it doesn't sound at this point in time like Bennett is one of them, and it definitely sounds like he'll probably stay. So it's okay, no guarantees or anything. The contract has not been finalized yet, but it does sound like there's been progress made to an extension, according to Ed Pagnotta, for Bennett and the Panthers. Going over to the Seattle Kraken, Elliotte Friedman mentions that they are a team that wants to make a splash this offseason. He says that they want to try and make some sort of a big move to try and improve this team. He says that he wouldn't be surprised if the Kraken took a stab at trying to offer sheet someone. So I'm not sure who they could try and offer sheet. Like, I think they could definitely use some defensive help, maybe some help on the forward group. Wouldn't be surprised if they did move off from Grubauer, that they would need some help on the goaltending side. So I'm not exactly sure who they could try and target in the offseason, but it definitely sounds like, according to Elliotte Friedman, this team wants to make a big splash, wants to try and make some big improvements to try and make this team a little bit closer to playoff ready. And according to Elliotte Friedman, he wouldn't be surprised if they were a team who tried to target someone via the offer sheet thing, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to Larry Brooks, he was talking about the New York Rangers and says that Alexis Lafreniere's name has come up in trade rumors. That's a very interesting one. I personally don't see Lafreniere getting moved, but I think he's either either this offseason or next offseason he'll have his new contract, have trade protection kick in, and if the Rangers really didn't want to have him on a long-term deal, they could try and move him before his trade protection kicks in. Now, I'm not sure about Lafreniere. We've heard a lot about Zibanejad, Miller, Susie potentially being moved. I think those guys are all more likely than Lafreniere. I know Lafreniere had a little bit of a down season last year compared to the year before, but I still think Lafreniere is a pretty good player, and he's one of the younger pieces on that Rangers team. I don't think they would really want to move him. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. Personally, I don't see Lafreniere getting moved. I think it's more likely that he stays in the Rangers organization for this upcoming season, but according to Larry Brooks, he does say that he's heard the Rangers' Alexis Lafreniere name be in the rumor mill, so we'll have to wait and see if that winds up happening. Next, going over to the Utah Hockey Club, according to a couple of recent reports that I've seen, according to Elliotte Friedman, he says that the Utah Mammoth are in the midst of a lot of things right now. He says that they have their name in quite a few things at this point in time. He says that they also could lose McBain as an offer sheet target. He says that he's talked to a lot of people who say that McBain could be a very likely offer sheet target. I think the Utah could probably match what other teams would want, but if a team signs McBain in an offer sheet to somewhere between Hollowell and Broberg's salary that were offer sheet last year, I could see Utah wind up not matching that. So McBain, who's a solid third, fourth line center, could be an offer sheet candidate. Utah apparently has their name in a lot of things right now, and according to Myrtle of The Athletic, he says that Utah could be big players for a guy like Nikolai Ehlers. I'm not sure if Utah is going to be the best fit for Marner. It doesn't sound like they really want to overpay, but I could see him have some major interest in guys like Ehlers or Besser, who are the tier down from Marner. So I'm not going to say it's a guarantee. Like, I think if teams missed out on Marner, they go over to Ehlers or Besser and start overpaying them. Maybe Utah does not try and sign either of those guys, but according to Myrtle, he says that Ehlers could be a guy that Utah tries to target. So very interesting note there, but we'll have to keep our eye on McBain as a potential offer sheet target. Keep your eye on Utah in general. It seems that they're very likely to make a lot of moves over the next couple of weeks. And according to Myrtle, they could be a big player for Nikolai Ehlers. So I have to wait on that. And lastly here, going over to Jason Robertson, according to Elliotte Friedman, Frank Stavali, and Jeff Merrick, they've all been mentioning Jason Robertson in the rumor mill. According to Elliotte Friedman, he says that he has heard Jason Robertson's name been out there, basically to try and free up cap space to sign Mikael Granlund if they can't free up cap space via moving Lyubushkin and or Dumba. So that's a very interesting note there. I think primarily they want to move Lyubushkin, they want to move Dumba, or they want to move Marchment, because all those guys are making $3+ million, and I think they could easily do without any one of those guys. So I think Robertson's like a last case scenario, but if they cannot move off any one of those guys and they really want to try and sign a guy like Mikael Granlund, maybe that's a trade that happens. I still don't see Robertson getting moved. According to Frank Stavali, he definitely says that there's smoke to the Jason Robertson rumors, so it's definitely not something that's just being fabricated. It definitely sounds like Robertson's name is in the trade market, although I would definitely think that it's on the very low side of actually happening. According to Jeff Merrick, he says that contract negotiations were not really great the first time around. Like a couple of years back before he signed his 4-year bridge deal, Robertson definitely didn't have great negotiations. So Merrick says that if they feel like Robertson will not want to sign, or if they could have some more trouble negotiating a long-term extension, they could consider a Robertson move. So the Stars don't have too much draft capital, don't have too many top prospects anymore, and on top of that, could definitely use some cap flexibility. I definitely think on the cap flexibility side, moving Lyubushkin, Dumba, or Marchment would be a very smart move to try and free up cap space. But if no one wants those guys, and if it makes sense acquiring picks and prospects and things like that, and Robertson doesn't want to sign an extension, I could see Robertson get moved. So once again, no guarantees by any means that that happens, but we're going to have to wait and see on that. So according to a couple of recent reports from Freeman, Saravalli, Merrick, there could actually be some truth to Jason Robertson being moved out of Dallas. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But that's what I'm going to talk for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think about Jason Robertson? Could he potentially get moved? What do you think about Utah? Could they go after Ehlers as McBain an offer sheet target? What could they try and be doing right now? Do you think that the Kraken will make a splash this offseason? Could they offer sheet someone? Do you think Alexis Lafreniere will be traded by the Rangers? Do you think Bennett will sign an extension in Florida? And do you think Vancouver will keep Elias Pettersson instead of moving him? Definitely have your thoughts on all of that. Plus the news updates and the signing updates from the past couple of days. Definitely have your thoughts on all of that. Down in the comment section below. that's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video and for the to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for June 27th, June 28th, and July 1st live streams. I also have a blog to make news, rumors, analysis. If that's where check that out. I'll link that down in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.